Ever feel that tiny moment that almost missed space between the thought and the one who hears it? And if you started noticing that space, you're not overthinking. You're waking up, because something strange starts happening when you awaken. Your mind doesn't stop, but it no longer feels like you. Thoughts still appear, but they feel like weather passing through, and that can be terrifying. You might feel more sensitive than you've ever been, emotionally raw for no reason, disconnected from who you used to be. Like reality is slightly different, and the hardest part? You can't explain it to anyone. Because how do you tell someone, I'm starting to feel like I'm not my thoughts anymore? But listen closely, if this is happening to you, it's not a breakdown. It's a threshold. And in this video, I'm going to show you what that space is, why it's appearing now, and what it means about who you really are. Let's go straight to the experience. Right now, think a thought, any thought, maybe, what is this video about? Now pause, and notice something quietly profound. That thought appeared. And you noticed it, which means there is something in you that is aware of thought, and that awareness is not the thought. This is the beginning of spiritual awakening. Not visions, not angels, not numbers. But the moment you realize, I can observe my mind. Because observation creates distance, and distance creates freedom. Most people are trapped because they don't know they are thinking. They believe every thought is true. They believe every emotion is them. But the awakened person begins to see thought is an event, not an identity. And the space between the thought and the thinker is where your real self begins. Now let's address what you're probably wondering, because once you notice this space, everything changes, and it brings questions that can feel unsettling. Am I going crazy? Because you are no longer numb. You're starting to feel life directly. And yes, it can be intense. Why do I feel disconnected from people? Because you're disconnecting from performance, from masks, from roles. You may still love people, but you can no longer pretend. And that can feel lonely, but it's not loneliness. It's the shedding of false belonging. Why do I feel like I'm watching myself? Because you are. The watcher is waking up. And the watcher has always been there. You're just noticing it now. Now we go deeper. Because this space isn't just a nice concept. It is the doorway to your true nature. Here's what most people don't realize. The mind is designed to narrate. It comments. It predicts. It worries. It replays. That's what it does. But awakening begins when you stop confusing narration with reality. Let me say this in a way your nervous system will understand. Your mind is not your enemy. It's just loud. And the reason it's loud right now is because you're no longer fully identified with it. So it tries harder. It increases volume. It produces more thoughts, more doubts, more old fears. Not because you're regressing, but because the mind is losing control. This is why awakening often feels like anxiety that comes out of nowhere, old memories resurfacing, random sadness, identity confusion, waves of emptiness, feeling like you don't recognize yourself. But here is the key. The moment you notice it, you are already beyond it. Because the mind can only trap you when you're inside it. But the moment you become the witness, you step into the space. And the space is not empty. The space is alive. The space is peace. The space is power. The space is your real self. Now, here's the part people don't tell you. When you enter the space between thought and thinker, you start to feel something else. A quiet presence, a stillness, almost like you've been living in a crowded room your whole life. And someone finally opened a window, and for the first time, you can breathe. This is why so many awakened people describe it like, I don't know who I am anymore, but I know I'm not who I used to be. And that is the perfect description of the threshold. Because you're not losing yourself. You're losing the false self, the one made of conditioning, survival patterns, emotional armor, people-pleasing, fear-based identity. And the reason it feels destabilizing is because you used to rely on that identity to feel safe. So when it dissolves, the nervous system panics. Not because you're in danger, but because your system hasn't learned yet that you can exist without the mask, that you can exist without the story, that you can exist without the constant thinking. Now listen carefully. This is important. The space between thought and thinker is where healing happens. Because in that space, you can feel an emotion without becoming it. You can have a thought without obeying it. You can remember the past without reliving it. You can face fear without collapsing into it. This is where your power returns. Not the power of control, but the power of presence. And presence is the most transformational force on earth. Because presence dissolves illusion. Presence dissolves false identity. Presence dissolves fear. Not by fighting it, but by outlasting it. Now, I want to give you something practical because this isn't just spiritual. It's psychological. Here's what's happening in grounded terms. When you awaken, your brain begins shifting out of constant threat scanning. Your nervous system begins releasing stored tension. Your identity begins unhooking from thought loops. That's why you feel sensitive. That's why you feel raw. That's why you might cry randomly. Your system is recalibrating. You are returning to baseline, that because you've lived in mental noise for so long, baseline feels unfamiliar, silence feels unfamiliar, peace feels unfamiliar. And your mind might even interpret peace as danger. Because the mind was trained to believe, if I'm not worrying, I'm not safe. So when you enter stillness, the mind panics. It says, something's wrong, but nothing is wrong. You are simply becoming present. Now, here's the revelation that changes everything. You are not awakening into something. You are awakening out of something. Out of unconscious identification. Out of mental captivity, out of emotional fusion, and into the space that has always been there. The space that has been waiting. The space that is you. Now I want to take you even deeper. Because there's something else hidden in this experience. And it's the part that makes people cry when they finally understand it. When you start noticing the space, you begin to realize you've never actually been broken. You were just asleep. You were just trying to survive, and the part of you that felt trapped was never your soul. It was your mind. It was your story. It was your survival self, but your true self has been untouched the whole time, and that's why awakening feels like coming home. Not to a place, but to a presence. And once you touch that presence, even for a second, you can never fully forget it. Because it feels more real than anything you've ever known. Now let's talk about what happens next. Because noticing the space is only the beginning, and most people don't realize there are stages to this. At first, the space appears for a second. Then thought returns. Then the space appears again. Then thought returns again, and the mind will try to pull you back. It will say, this is pointless, this is weird. You're making it up. You need to figure your life out. But that's the mind trying to regain dominance. Because the mind is addicted to control. And the space is the end of control. But also, the beginning of true peace. Now here's what you must understand. The goal is not to destroy thought. The goal is not to stop thinking. That's not realistic. The goal is to stop being owned by thought. Because thoughts will still come. But they will no longer define you. You will become the sky, and thoughts will become clouds. Passing, changing, dissolving. And the more you rest in the space, the more you'll notice something surprising. The space begins to expand. The gaps get longer. The stillness deepens. And you start to feel guided. Not by voices, not by dogma, but by an inner knowing, a quiet intelligence, a presence that feels ancient, and as this grows, your entire life starts reorganizing, relationships shift, priorities change. You lose interest in what used to excite you, you crave truth, you crave peace, you crave alignment. And you may even start noticing, your intuition becomes sharper, your energy becomes more sensitive, your ability to feel people becomes stronger. And yes, you may start seeing synchronicities. Because when you become present, you start noticing the patterns you were too distracted to see before. Now listen. If you're in this phase, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not losing your mind. You are becoming conscious, and the space between thought and thinker is the doorway to the life you were always meant to live. But there's one final thing, and it's the part most people miss. This space is not just where peace is found, it's where your soul speaks. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to recognize the difference between intuition, fear, ego, and true inner guidance. Because once you learn that, you stop searching outside yourself forever, and you finally begin living from the deepest truth. So if you've been feeling sensitive, confused, different, and you've been wondering, what is happening to me? This is what's happening. You are becoming aware, and awareness is the beginning of everything. Stay close to the space. It's not empty, it's you. And if this resonated, leave a comment with one word: space. Because I want you to know you're not alone in this. Not even close.